And then when we switch to the panel, let's move it that way. So we get. But like you're good right now, I say, because I'm gonna have it focus. So I have this focus on you, and then when we get to the Q&A, we'll.
Can you guys hear me okay? Wonderful.
If we get to the Q&A, we'll move it over here.
All right, welcome everybody to the Central Coast Multifamily Forum. I know Ventura County owners aren't necessarily Central Coast. I kind of consider that Southern California, but for tonight when we talk about Central Coast, it'll be Ventura County and Santa Barbara County together. A couple of housekeeping notes. There's restrooms over here to my left if you ever need to use the restroom. Additionally, if you haven't met my beautiful wife, she is the bartender tonight. And she is certainly my better half, so go please talk to her, refill your wine or your beer, your drink anytime. So a little bit about us. My name is Logan Ward. Again, as I said, I'm with Marcus & Millichap. We're a large commercial real estate firm with 80 offices throughout the country. Under the Marcus & Millichap umbrella, I work with my business partner, Glenn Schur, who's a Senior Managing Director of Investments. Since we've started, collectively, we've sold about $1.5 billion in multifamily real estate transactions. All we specialize in is multifamily real estate and land development real estate. I'm on a team of 10 different agents. My submarkets that I cover are Ventura County and Santa Barbara County, while Glenn and some of the others on our team cover different pockets of Los Angeles, San Fernando Valley, West LA, Santa Monica, etc. So currently we have 30 active listings on markets. We have information at your tables and all of our contact numbers. Tonight you're going to hear from an awesome panel of professionals that are very well respected in their individual trades and crafts. And I will introduce them one at a time in just a few moments. But before I begin, why are you here tonight? Number one is there's a lot of things happening in the last 5 years with multifamily investments throughout California. Am I correct? Yeah. So a big part of tonight is to be informed. 80% of our job as real estate agents is from an advisory role. We have clients we work with 10 to 15 years, guiding them through different markets, helping them buy assets, refinance, and you name it. We're kind of a one-stop shop, and we love to help connect people. Protect what you've built. Some of you own thousands of apartment units in Southern California. Some of you own one fourplex in the city of Santa Barbara for 30 years. So there's different walks of life in this room. And then lastly is be proactive and not reactive. So owners who plan ahead are the ones who come out ahead. I've heard it said like this before. We have a 401k, my wife and I. We don't plan to cash out anytime soon. I don't think that would be necessarily a wise decision. But sometimes once a year or so, we talk to our financial advisor and kind of look under the hood and say, how's it going? What do we need to do differently? How much money's in the account, etc. So thank you again for being here tonight. One of the things I like to do when we start have a first meeting with a client is I kind of like to zoom out and look at the macroeconomic picture in commercial real estate and kind of look at the last 5 years and what's been happening. And then tonight we're going to cover that for just a couple minutes, and then we'll zoom into more specifically Central Coast and some of the headwinds and some of the positive that's we're seeing. So I'm going to bring everybody back to COVID-19 2020 when we're all wearing masks. I know we don't want to stay there for long, and we're glad we're out of it, but the Federal Reserve cut interest rates in order to boost the economy to next to nothing. We called it a 0% interest rate, although there weren't zero. But you could borrow capital for very, very cheap, which had a huge impact and inflated values of commercial real estate. I think most of us in the room know here that in 2021, 2022, it was the hottest real estate market in the history ever. People were willing to pay a lot more for properties because they could borrow that money at a very low rate. In 2022, excuse me, the Federal Reserve stated they wanted to have a soft economic landing, and so they started raising interest rates over the course of the next year or so. And during that time, it was the highest or the sharpest interest rate increase in the history of our Federal Reserve. And so as you can see, the federal funds target rate got all the way up, pretty high, 5%, and the 10-year Treasury is now trading at around 4.5%. Apartment lending and financing is based off the 10-year Treasury, so this is kind of the basis for it. Before the war in Iran, we were at 4%. So, there's a lot of geopolitical things happening lately nationally, and one of the biggest headwinds according to values. Some of you are perhaps in a refinance right now if you pulled out 5-year debt 5 or 6 years ago, 5 years ago, and you're seeing those hit today with the different interest rates than you maybe have gotten 5 years ago. Some of the other things or headwinds that we're facing today, tariffs and material costs. So construction materials alone have climbed to an index of 156 versus in 2020 being 100. Versus just 126 for inflation. So wages are also right behind. So the cost of materials for construction, toilets, sewer laterals, roofs, et cetera, development are a lot higher than what they were even on an inflation adjusted basis. Hourly rates climbed from $30 nationally for a simple trade worker to $41. We're now at, in Central Coast, probably closer to $55 an hour plus. Immigration and labor supply have been a big topic lately with stricter immigration policy, squeezing the construction trades. The Palisade fires rebuilds are pulling a lot of tradesmen from electricians and plumbers, etc., causing some upward pressure on rates to build an ADU, to repair a roof, to redo electrical panels, etc. And then property insurance is another major thing in the last 5 years, right? I think everyone in this room has probably felt the pain maybe of some property insurance, whether they're getting dropped by their carrier, whether they're being asked to put in significant capital expenses into their property to get a worse rate, dropping habitability coverage, et cetera, et cetera. Thayer is going to touch more on that in detail here in just a few minutes. And then last but not least, new local regulations. So California over the last 5 or 6 years, it seems like every year they have something coming out where whether it's a rent control, whether it's now you got to provide stoves and refrigerators to your tenants, whether Oxnard has a 4% rent control implemented 4 years ago. The city of Ojai has a 4% rent control, and then coming soon to Santa Barbara City landlords, very extreme form of rent control, which includes 60% of CPI allowable increases annually. Niv will also touch on that. He's very passionate about this, so he'll be able to speak to that a little bit more here soon. Good things going for the Central Coast, Ventura County multifamily. Apartment rent versus home payment. I just thought this was a unique slide. So average rent right now is $2,300. This includes workforce housing in Lompoc, workforce housing in Oxnard, and then also properties right here on the Mesa for rental units. So right now the delta is $4,400. If I'm 30 years old and I have a good job and I'm trying to go buy a house and I'm paying $2,300, $3,000 a month, I need to tie up $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 worth of capital to pay $6,700 a month for my mortgage, right? So as a multifamily owner, that's a good thing. If you don't own a home, it's unfortunate, but as a multifamily owner, that's going to drive rents and drive demands for rentals. Quick slide. This is, I thought, unique. So in 2010, first time average home buyer was 30 years old. In 2020, 33. In 2022, it was 36. And now in 2025, the first time average homeowner is a 40-year-old person. The Central Coast economy in Ventura County and Santa Barbara is doing well. There's been some little hiccups over the last couple of years, but overall some positive job growth coming. SpaceX is a big announcement. Vandenberg, I don't know what's going to happen with that necessarily, but they're planning on doing a $800 million investment, and it's going to add roughly 2,000 jobs. County of Ventura, UC Santa Barbara, and also Amgen in Thousand Oaks, Ventura County is adding 5,500 jobs with a planned $600 million investment. The vacancy rate compared to the national average at 5.1%. In Ventura County, we're at 3.9%. Santa Barbara is even lower at 3.4%. So another good thing, I was just talking to a few of you, and you said you put a rental on market, and it goes fairly quick. So hopefully that's because of summer months as well. I think that has a play to it, but it's a good thing that you get those rented out as soon as possible. And then supply, right? Supply affects rental. And so Ventura County apartment construction, we had 1,800 units come online in 2024, a little bit less in 25 because the cost of debt increased. And then in 2026, projected 660, in 2027, 590. And in Santa Barbara County apartment construction, we had a big influx of supply in 2024, very little over the next couple of years. And in 2027 for Santa Barbara County, they project 485 units to come online. This does not include the UC Santa Barbara's 2,200 student beds that are coming online fall of 2027. I think most of you know there was a lawsuit between Goleta and UC Santa Barbara that settled and asked UC Santa Barbara to build significantly more housing so it could drop the rents in the city of Goleta. We would expect that would have an effect on Goleta multifamily owners and also some in Santa Barbara as well. And then just a high level, Central Coast apartment cap rate yield over Treasury. So as you guys saw in 2021, when the Federal Reserve was trying to hold on to the economy, interest rates went very low, and there was a significant delta between what you could buy as a cap rate, as a rate of return for multifamily property, and what you could borrow at. So transaction velocity was very high during this time. In 2022, they raised interest rates, and now that is much closer. This is the 10-year Treasury today. This is an average cap rate in the Central Coast multifamily of 5%. If you're workforce housing that's stabilized in Oxnard, you're at 6.25 cap. If you're in prime Santa Barbara or different pockets of Isla Vista, you'll be lower than that. But an average blended 5%. And so this would be like negative leverage. If you borrow that 4.5% Treasury rates right now, you're probably looking at close to 6.25 financing right now, depending on who you are, your credit, the size of the loan, the building, etc. And so you would significantly be, negative leverage. You're paying 6% to make 5%, if that makes sense. So the transaction velocity has slowed down. There are some headwinds, but at the end of the day, there's also opportunity, right? Through every cycle, one thing holds true: well-positioned multifamily assets in coastal markets are still in demand. Coastal scarcity holds value. You have CEQA, you have the Coastal Commission that prevents sometimes some development or supply, so that helps your vacancy rate and keeps your tenants in the units. And then this could be a good time if you're looking to potentially acquire or add to the portfolio. As the market resets, we could see some real opportunities arise. Perfect. So I want to introduce the panelists. That is our multifamily outlook. Just a quick recap of macroeconomic, but also local stuff. And we're going to get into rent control, Santa Barbara rent control, etc. But before I introduce the panelists, I would actually like to introduce Taraje. Would you like to stand up, Taraje? Taraje is she's an intern with us. Yeah, she's been here for 3 or 4 weeks, right? Why don't you tell us about yourself? Sorry. Go ahead.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Taraje. I've been lucky enough to meet Glenn, Phil, and Logan the last almost 4 weeks now, and I've actually never learned so much from a group of people. I feel very welcomed, supported, but also feel confident that you guys can tell me that I'm doing something wrong. I'm just very grateful to be around these guys, so happy to be here. Thank you for having me and learning so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming. You're awesome. Yeah. She's going into her senior year at Cal Poly SLO next year, so we'll lose her for a little bit, but we hope you come back and consider joining commercial real estate. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel of experts here. To my immediate right, we have Tristan Cravens with Santa Barbara Permitting. I'll go ahead and let you do a little introduction on yourself. I got your slides here.
Yeah, sure. So it's good to meet you all. My name is Tristan. Fun little fact, I'm 6th generation Carpinterian, so my family's been there a very long time. I'm not sure if any of you know Cravens Lane, but it's actually named after our family. Anyway, but I'll tell you a little bit about our company. There's some slides up here, but I'll just take 20 seconds to tell you what we do. So we're a pre-construction company, and so we've been described as one throat to throttle in the pre-construction process. So we help with land use, architectural plans, and permitting for construction projects, from single family to multifamily to commercial. We do all of it. And so I guess really the reason I'm up here on this panel tonight is to try and tell you what I know about the permitting process and some of the key issues people run into with it in Santa Barbara, and hopefully some ways to help you get around it if you have construction projects in town. And then the second reason is to tell you more about California state laws that are being passed to help spark new construction and build more density in everywhere in California, but Santa Barbara is one of the places that really needs it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to tell you more.
Thank you, Tristan. And then we have Paul Knight, who's a property manager with Mission City Property Management.
Hello? All right, my name is Paul Knight, Mission City Property Management, third generation in Santa Barbara. I'm a real estate broker. I just do residential, long-term in Santa Barbara, Goleta to Carpinteria. And I don't do HOAs, short-term, that's my specialty. It's been fun. There's been over 55 state law changes since 2019. That doesn't talk about Goleta, unincorporated city of Carp, or anything else. I jokingly, accurately, if it's every 3 to 6 months, there is a new law from California or one of our local jurisdictions that's added another liability panel for us. My passion is rentals and people first approach supported by technology. So half the time, people like, is this legal? You need to talk to that guy who's the attorney. They charge about $500 to $600 an hour minimum. My goal is to hopefully get a resolution and then be creative with providing a solution. So an example, a lot of old properties in here, none of them have individual meters. You can do like reissue utility billing on turnover with these apartments, so you're not stuck paying all the utilities now. There's creative ways, but how do we navigate and get creative to optimize your investment? So that's what I'm here for. And then I'm a specialist in compliance.
Thank you, Paul. And then we have Trevor Floor with A-Point Investments, Alternative Investments.
Cool. Ooh. Logan and Glenn, thank you very much for hosting tonight, for having me. I sent, when Logan asked me to prepare some slides to introduce myself, I sent him 6 slides. He kept 1. Thanks a lot for that, Logan. But I'm the president of A-Point Investments. I am essentially a tax strategist and an investment advisor. I specialize in 1031 exchanges, so when investment property owners sell their investment properties, they're going to be subject to long-term capital gain tax and depreciation recapture at the federal level, and then also state level taxes and net investment income taxes. So big tax impact to selling an investment property. I help mitigate that by educating on the 1031 exchange. And as a part of that exchange, you can consider a passive replacement property investment called a DST, or a Delaware Statutory Trust. With a DST, you purchase a fractional interest of usually a large institutional quality asset. It's entirely managed for you, and you get the benefits of real estate ownership, which is monthly income, depreciation deductions, and the ability to continue doing 1031 exchanges, but you don't have to manage anything. So it becomes, sometimes it's a backstop for people in exchanges looking for a kind of a fail-safe or fire alarm option in their exchange, but oftentimes people are electing to sell their properties to pivot into something that's more passive, and the DST is a good solution for that. Trevor Floor with A-Point Investments. Thanks.
Thanks, Trevor. And then to his right, we have Thayer White with Brown & Brown Property Insurance.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Sorry about that. Yes, my name is Thayer White. I'm a property and casualty insurance broker with Brown & Brown Insurance here in Santa Barbara, California. I do specialize in commercial properties, hospitality, and nonprofits, among other things. But multifamily is something that I'm passionate about, and obviously I've seen a lot of challenges over the last several years. So very simply, my goal is to make sure that all the property owners are properly covered, getting the lowest prices possible, and getting excellent service year-round. Brown & Brown itself, we are the 6th largest full-service international brokerage firm in the world. That gives us great access to a wide variety of carriers, and help us create competition for all those carriers among each other. So that's a little about myself and my company, and just looking forward to try to help you guys and these other industries that can interact with other people.
Thank you, there. And then the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Nin Davidovich. How you doing, Dave?
Oh, hey, what's going on? I'm just going to keep this mic on so I don't mess around with it. So, hi, I'm Nick Davidovich, and I'm here to be the harbinger of doom and the herald of terror, because you guys are about to get rent control. And so I'm from Los Angeles, and I know it sounds bad, and it sounds scary. It's so much worse than that. But we've learned a few tricks down in Los Angeles about how to avoid things, and some good information you should have about how to fight the stemming tide of red commie nonsense. And so we could talk a little bit about that.
Awesome, thank you, dude. So yeah, the way tonight's going to work is I've kind of listed some questions for some of these folks that have been very hot topics and questions that we get asked a lot recently, and they'll answer them and cover a lot of information. And then we will have a Q&A for anybody that wants to ask questions about their specific property to any one of these people. You're more than welcome to. So Thayer, I'm going to have you start us out on the insurance market, if you don't mind. What is the latest state of the insurance market? Are carriers coming back to California to insure, the FAIR plan, et cetera? Give us an update.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously, I'm not very good with the mic, apparently, but I can talk to you about the overall property market, especially for multifamily. I'll take a big picture. So, obviously, in 2020, 2021, and 2022, I think you all probably experienced a massive increase in your premiums. Many of the standard carriers you hear about, commercials, Liberty Mutual, Nationwide, Travelers, they all started pulling out of California. Essentially, they started thinking that they're going to lose money, not make money. Unfortunately, the reality in the insurance world is they're here to make money, not necessarily do the right thing. However, that was a massive, I would call it a big correction. I think I have a lot of clients that would have double or triple their coverage. And I can share that there's been a stabilization over the last, my opinion, two years. I can share that I have seen clients actually receive a decrease in their premiums. And I'm not seeing standard carriers come back to the state of California and locally in our spot. Now they're telling me that it's opening up. They just really want to see the ideal property, something that's relatively brand new, not in a brush area, great roof, no plumbing issues, HVACs. And the reality is most property in our region is built in the 60s. And I want to be transparent with you guys. I would be shocked to see another big step. Big increase.
Just talk. I can just speak.
Yeah, just talk about it.
We can hear you. Can you hear me? I'll just keep talking. So, honestly, the property market has stabilized. That's great. There are more carriers coming into the area, but there are surplus carriers. So what that means is they can still conduct business in California. They can still increase their rates. Their coverage might not be as ideal as a standard carrier had in the past, but it's really the promising thing is they want to come back in the area. I do think there's been a stabilization among all the competition. And I have seen a few clients actually get a reduction. So, unfortunately, this area is all considered a brush area. We saw what happens to California, the Palisades. We have new technology that gives us, pre-modeling issues with fire. I mean, in this area, you guys knew the Painted Cave fire. I mean, that jumped the 101. So we have the data that shows of what can happen for a fire. That's one thing. The other thing is, can you actually, improve your property and maintain it in a good way? I'm not the underwriter, but I talk with underwriters. There's 4 or 5 things that they really look at as key indicators for the property. How old is the roof? How old is how is the plumbing? How's the HVAC? How close it is to brush? Do you have cameras? Do you not? Is it sprinklered or not? I'm here to help you guys find those things. And as a broker, my goal is to create narratives that show, hey, you property owners are doing a great job to proactively make efforts to have the property, not wait till the last minute. So I'm not seeing a standard carrier coming in, an apartment that's built in the 70s, and all of a sudden give you a great rate. But there are carriers that are willing to much go lower of what you might have paid last year or the prior year. So I guess that's just a quick state of the market for an insurance world, in particular for multifamily. Nationwide, I've seen it actually gone down a little bit. But again, those are places where they're growing and building many more new buildings compared to areas. If you're building something brand new, you do have a good chance. You're going to have a good standard carrier to take a look at it. And that's just kind of my 2 cents at this point.
What's the, go ahead.
Is there a concern about surplus lines maybe not paying out if there's a big disaster?
I don't think so. However, depending on what broker you're working with and what brokerage you're working with, it's important to see what their financial status is. You can work with a C or a B or a D rated carrier. That would be a concern. Me personally, I'm only allowed to work with surplus carriers that have an A- or better financial status. And if you have an A- or better, we're not worried about the inability to pay out. And there's a lot more surplus carriers, so that could be a concern. But as long as you're not taking shortcuts or really shady insurance carriers, I wouldn't be concerned at all.
Thank you.
Is there an update on habitability claims? I think there's a big conversation on a lot of insurance carriers not willing to insure for habitability right now.
Yep.
And also deductible. How does that play in, you increase your deductible?
Yeah. So 2 things. Property. Property is going to pay normally 80 or 90% of your total premium if you own property here. However, your main concern might be a general liability, trip and fall, and then one big exclusion that a lot of people probably have is the habitability exclusion. If there's mold, if there's not clean water, don't have electricity, bed bugs, that's ability to claim, to file a claim towards that owner, and your insurance carrier is going to deny that. That's something that whether you have a broker or not, I mean you do have a broker, but again, look at that exclusion. I have trust that you guys are all good property owners. There are property owners here. There are, not necessarily looking at the best efforts, best interests for their owners. And that's just something to know that the second there's an issue, water, bed bites, you really got to take care of that as soon as possible. Because if you let that go for weeks and months, that's where a carrier will deny that claim. They're getting an attorney. They want $200,000, $300,000, maybe a lot of money. So that general liability is just really, really important to know that, hey, you've got to put the right effort and know that your tenants are in safe space. You're always looking to make sure that there are, the ability to have a good, clean life living, a standard of care. And then property. Something that I will help people is, what is your property deductible? You might know right now, you might not have no idea. That's been one way to save a little premium. A couple years ago, I think a standard property deductible might be $1,000, maybe $5,000. And that's part of your risk of appetite. I've met with a lot of people, find their policy. Hey, did you know that your property deductible is $1,000? Would you file a claim for a small little, issue that's $1,500? They say, Thayer, no, I would not file that claim. I said, well, at what level that you're saying, that's a sweet spot, and I really want to be able to file that claim. So I just think it's important to make sure of A, what is your property deductible? Then B, what does that loan you have, if you have a loan, is there a maximum of that deductible can have? Sometimes that's something can be negotiable also. So those are just two keys that, as a broker, to try to encourage people and educate people. Okay, what am I looking at? I get it. I'm not getting the same rate that I want. How could I save a little bit of money? And how do I avoid having a disastrous claim that might be denied?
Wonderful. And really quickly, are property owners okay to make claims? I know for a long time we had clients that were just frightened to make any claim because they were afraid they would drop.
People, a couple years ago would never want to file a claim because they think that the second you file a claim, I'm gonna get dropped, by your standard carrier. And there's a little bit of truth to that a couple years ago. But that's because those carriers were finding any reason whatsoever to get rid of you guys. They were seeing California as a non-profitable, it's not an area to be profitable. But there's a reason that's why you have insurance. And that's why, maybe you're already doing it, but it's a way of self-insuring. Saying, an $8,000 property issue, I'm gonna have to take care of that on my own. I don't want to file a claim. Again, but if there's a massive issue, you certainly want to file a claim. That's why you pay the insurance, and you pay that year by year. So everyone has a different risk of appetite. Everyone has, when you're sleeping at night and there's a terrible claim, at one point that you're okay to stomach that and pay it on your own versus filing the claim. And so I want to encourage you guys, when it's a terrible disaster, talk with your broker immediately, have a discussion about that, but don't wait. You can't file a claim in 2 months later. That looks fishy, that looks questionable. They're going to file away to deny that. They're going to also say, hey, these people are not responsible. They're not really being proactive, and that finds another way to increase that rate or decide to drop you guys. So you got to work together, and also having a narrative to show that look, I'm always each year making small improvements. I want to make it a great place for the tenants. I want to avoid any claims for me or for you, the carrier. And so that's just my thoughts about that.
Thank you. I'm going to switch gears. Do you have anything to add to that, Ed?
Yeah. So I just wanted to, I don't get to say this very often, so I'm going to relish this. I'm going to give you some good news. So we do a lot of, besides the evictions and other sort of stuff, we do a lot of habitability defense. Sometimes, a lot of times insurance companies hire us. And sometimes private parties, private owners hire us, and they're trying to they're trying to ask us to help them get things covered, even though they might have a habitability exclusion or a mold exclusion. Now, in terms of exclusions, by the way, when you're looking, because you're going to ask your broker for the policy, and the first thing your agent is going to do is going to send you the declarations page. That's not the policy. That's just a summary of how much money you have to pay. So then ask for the full policy, and then you're going to get an encyclopedia in PDF that you're probably not going to want to read through the whole thing. So there are two different exclusions. One is sort of like a biologicals exclusion. That's going to cover, it's not going to say mold, it's actually going to say fungus. If you look for the word mold, you're not going to find it. It's going to say fungus, and then it's going to also describe other fun little people.
It's working.
Fun little guests that you don't want in your place, like rodents and bed bugs and all that stuff. It's going to be all covered under one. You might have that exclusion, but actually not have a habitability exclusion. It's a separate exclusion. So you got to look for both of them and see what you got. The way that we sometimes get things covered that really kind of shouldn't be covered is, let's say you have a plaintiff's attorney, and this is not the guy who went to the best law school. He did not. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. and he gives you a lawsuit that is just mold, literally just mold. And if we send that in, that ain't gonna get covered. That's gonna get denied. So somebody, a random person who's not me, places a call to the plaintiff's attorney and says, hey, you know this claim isn't gonna get covered, right? But you know what would get covered? Is if maybe, does your plaintiff, did they maybe have some property damage? Did maybe somebody have some personal injury that had nothing to do with the mold? Maybe you should put that in an amended complaint. And then they do that. And then we submit that to the insurance company. Now, the insurance company has to defend you, maybe not indemnify, but they have to defend you for the entire lawsuit, even if there's just one bed sheet that's damaged. Once you trigger that defense coverage, now the insurance company's on the hook to pay a bunch of money. And even if they don't owe you a technical legal indemnity, they might say, wait a minute, so I can settle this case for $100,000, or I can pay these lawyers $250,000 and stand on principle. They're not gonna do that. I mean, some junior adjuster who's trying to prove his worth might say that, well, that's not covered, or we're not gonna pay. I'm like, okay, can I talk to the VP, please, who can do math? And then we explain to the VP, hi, you can either pay these people, this attorney's $250,000, or you can pay this joker $100,000. 100 is less than 250. And they say, wow, you're right. I never realized that. And they give the joker 100 even though they're not supposed to. And that's to your benefit. So, there are ways of getting around those exclusions in certain circumstances. Is it better for you to have that insurance? Of course it is. But a lot of the time, it's just not on the table. But not on the table is not the end of the story.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. I'm going to get to switch gears here and get to Paul a little bit. I know Paul has a 6-year-old birthday tonight, right? So you'll have to leave at some point. But thank you for coming. Talk to us about vacancy rates, rental market right now. How's it looking? Are things flying off the shelf? Are rents softening? Are rents going up?
Testing. Okay, this one works. Cool. So it's interesting. This was the hottest winter market I've experienced, and I'm from here. So normally winter is always a soft season. I hope to get 2 or 3 inquiries, maybe a week in the winter. I was averaging 5 to 10. Now, on the flip side though, I had an owner marketing a unit 1,000 below market because she's like, hey, I just got from charitable giving. I'm like, well, it's also an older unit, but that's way priced in. I had 8 out of 8 people that I showed off market decline the unit because it was old, even though it was 1,000 below market. So once I openly marketed, I was overwhelmed and I rented it fast, but that's just showing tenants consistently are picky and they're pricing that well. And so when things are not fully renovated, but I'm like, I just released a 1-bedroom triplex unit for $3,700. Which is wild. I used to be in a Mesa house. But it was turnkey, had a garage, had the amenities, where I could have a 2,500 unit apartment that's from the 90s, and people are gonna walk in, they might move in, and then they're gonna complain and create headaches for you. So it's an interesting dynamic, but generally vacancy rates, if it's marginally priced well, it's gonna move, and there's high demand consistently. So if it's not renting, it's probably because of your price. I'm averaging, even in winter, 21 days from list to lease. Right now I'm averaging 12 days for the summer market.
Anything renters are looking for specifically outside of stainless steel appliances and nice countertops, or?
So storage, design utility, parking, and laundry. So I was just talking to them, I was like, I'm not putting laundry in my units, my building's the same way, it's a terrible location. Like, okay, but this is what people want in 2026. And like, I've done this enough where I know your sewer lines are probably 1.5 inches. You're not gonna have big enough plumbing lines to put in these modern appliances. Okay, you are forever capping your building, as long as you are aware of that. Or do you finally want to renovate one of your units, put in new plumbing, and over time, you're now gonna maximize your rent because you now have no future turnover in that unit. You don't have future projects, you lease it consistently. So those are the top, those like, there's Santa Barbara charm, and then there's like that's Santa Barbara funky. So anytime you can be like, hey, it's actually thought out and intentional, tenants notice it and they say, I love it, how do I move in versus, so they chose not to do anything with that?
Yeah. This one I'll start with you and then maybe pop one over to Niv, but what's the best way you screen tenants now? And how do you know, is there
Illegally.
Yeah.
Well, the fun part is, so they passed a law in California where we're supposed to choose the first to apply that qualified. That's now all landlords are supposed to do that. If I choose out of order, like, oh, I want to choose the best qualified, I now have 6 days to refund every other application fee if anyone else applied, regardless of my processing costs and everything else. So generally in all my contracts, it says, look, because of all the fair housing, CRD, and everything else, I have the full authority. If they qualify per my criteria and they move in the date, I move them in. If somebody's out of that criteria, like, hey, we don't want a cosigner, they need one, then I check with the owner. Generally, people still want the story, and I'm like, I love that too, but like, I just had 3 different houses have daycare prospects all reach out to me. And every owner said, no, I don't want a daycare. I was like, that's a California fair housing. If they fully qualify, we cannot say no because they want a daycare in a single family. And first offense for federal fair housing complaint is $18,000. I've not seen California plus fees, but I've seen it 6-figure. Usually if there's a California fair housing lawsuit. But generally, that's why I'm like, sorry, if they qualify, they move in.
Hey Paul, tell them about the moisture you're telling me.
Oh.
And that example of kind of fraudulent claim that you had a way to
So mold, everyone deals with mold, tenants freaking out. I ran into it so much, I have my own inspection, I have a flare infrared camera, I have a moisture meter, so when tenants like, oh my God, there's mold. It's like, okay, is this actual water intrusion? If there's no moisture, there's no mold. And a lot of tenants now will be like, oh, they throw up the things, and then you send a remediator, I'm like, I want $50,000 to open the drywall. So my thing is, hey, if I can prove there's no issue, habitability, within 24 hours, we verify there's no claim, or, hey owner, there is an actual claim, I verified it, now we need to get a remediator. We're doing all of our due diligence to support habitability, safety for your tenants, and it's just one of the things I do because I was tired of trying to argue with tenants.
About that proactiveness. Niv, take us away. If you can, go on the microphone recording.
Here we go. All right. I'm going to tell you guys something that all your other lawyers are not going to tell you. Okay? You don't always have to do everything that the government tells you to do. I'll tell you why. Because you wouldn't listen to every other moron on the street. Why would you listen to these morons? Why? Because the worst morons voted for these morons? You're all still morons. You're all still saying dumb stuff. So we're not going to listen to you. Now let me explain how you do this. Because the people who scream the most are the people who call me the least. And that's not just a catchphrase that I want to trademark. That's the truth. Now, everything that Paul said is 100% true. That's the law. But let me tell you something else. You don't have to tell the tenants what you're thinking. You don't actually have to tell them why you're saying no. There's one exception to that. It's when the reason you're saying no is because it's something on their credit report, and then you have to tell them, yes, the reason we're saying no to you is because you have 3 bankruptcies and your credit score is 400, and if you didn't already know this, you have bigger problems than me not renting to you. But you have to give them the credit report and tell them all that stuff. But you know what? There's a lot of stuff you can find out about a person that's not on their credit report. And there's a lot of the times you just look at a tenant and be like, wow, you're going to be a troublemaker because you look and sound like every other troublemaker that my child was ever friends with in college. And I don't want you in my apartment. And if that's the reason, there's nothing on the books that says you have to tell him what you're thinking. It's like in The Godfather, remember? When he says to whatever his name is, Sonny, don't ever tell anyone what you're thinking outside the family. That's good advice. They were very successful. They made a lot of money. You should follow that advice. Don't tell people why you're saying no. It's a very simple tactic that I learned trying to ask girls out in college. Don't call them back. Don't text them back. Don't tell them why. Now, they might bother Paul or your other property managers and say, why? I want to know and you're discriminating against me. The answer is either don't answer them at all, called ghosting, right? Young pretty girls are very good at it. You can do it too. Or if they happen to catch you, okay, you just say, I don't know why they're not getting back to you. I told them to call you back. But I don't know. You know, we're just not being very efficient today. There's no law that says you have to be efficient. When you call the government office, do they get back to you right away? Do they process all your forms? Lickety split? No. Well, you don't have to be more efficient. You don't have to be more efficient than the government is. So, just don't tell people what you're thinking. Now, are some of them going to file BS CRD claims, California Civil Rights Department claims? Sure, that might happen. The most we've ever paid in one is $5,000. Most of them don't know how to respond to the investigator, so the investigator just drops the claims. But let's just say they're very serious about doing their nonsense discrimination claim. What would you rather have? The no good Nick who's already asking you questions and already telling you all the things that are bad about your process on the outside of your building, trying to get a lawyer to take his case, which isn't very good? Or do you want to let that person into your building? And I guarantee you, that is going to be a guy who's going to drive you insane and take out every last bit of happiness that you have in your body. And then he'll file a habitability lawsuit against you. I guarantee it. So you pick which lawsuit you want to do. If you want to do the second one, you got big problems. Okay? So you don't have to sit down and take it just because the government seems to think that they can tell you to. You actually do still have some ways of standing up for your property rights. And I know it sounds, once we start talking about rent control, it's not going to sound like that anymore. But there are still ways of protecting your property. And don't let anybody tell you it's not yours. If you pay the mortgage and you pay the taxes and you pay the insurance, that's your property. Your tenants are people who are borrowing it. And if they can't do the right thing and just be normal people, you get to take it back.
Preach.
Well, and that's why. And the attorney can fight. I can't because I can't get legal advice. So that's why we just increased the criteria. When I started, we used to be like, oh, like 600 credit, 2 times the rent. Now it's like, nope, 3 times the rent, minimum gross income, 680 minimum credit. And generally, if you don't hit references, everything else, automatic decline. Because unfortunately, we don't want, any time in my career, I'm like, I like the story, I like the person. Hey, Owner, let's try him, we like him too. Every time you did that, they were like that.
And coming soon to a town near you is the people who buy fake ID packets on TikTok. You don't even have to make your own, you can now buy them. They'll come with a 700 credit score. Excellent bank statements, W-2s, 1099s, phone numbers of references. When you call those phone numbers, some very respectable person answers and says, yeah, this John is a great employee. You know who that is? That's John's best friend, who's not really his employee. And then you'll call his references from prior landlords. That's John's best friend's girlfriend, who's not his landlord. And all the bank statements and all the credit scores, it's all fake. And the cashier's check they gave you, guess what? Just like Catch Me If You Can, that cashier's check is fake too. I get one of these every single month in Los Angeles. And you don't know the cashier's check is fake until 7 days after, and then the bank wakes up and says, by the way, you don't have this money in your bank because this is a fake cashier's check. You gotta watch out for those guys. Don't be afraid to say no.
Paul, I'm asking you one last question. I know at some point you have to leave, but what do you think when you take over a property for an owner that's looking to relinquish it to a property manager? What are some of the biggest areas where you see property owners commonly leaving money on the table where they can
So the third party is a lot of self-managing landlords. A lot of self-managing landlords, they never increased, and they're also scared because there's so many different laws, everything happening, so they kind of just ignore it, they push it away until they finally bring me and be like, okay, I'm here to be the protected barrier and help reset expectations, because a lot of tenants will take things as far as they can, where I have to help reset that. Then it's getting all of their paperwork in order with 1-year lease offers, which is now everywhere in this town except CARP. That messes up if you ever want to do an unlawful detainer, requiring renter's insurance. So there's just a lot of cleanup from a liability standpoint. Then we're like, okay, is your roof old? Is that going to be an insurance issue? Do you have a whole panel? So the first year or two is just like let's mitigate your mess. What's the immediate things to safeguard your liability? Then we can focus on the fun stuff is how do we capture our NOI? Can we start building back utilities? Hey, do we want it? We have a turnover hazard cash flow. Do you want to do bare minimum mitigating your vacancy, or do you want to get potentially another $500 to $800 a month in rent, capturing top of the market? Let's figure that out. We have financing, everything else. So most of this is like, hey, we have an old building. How do we start improving it proactively, mitigating your insurance, your legal risk? Then after we get a year or two of breathing, I'm like, okay, now I can get to the fun part of actually making this really sing for you financially. And I'm doing all the headache. You just get to enjoy and say yes or no most of it.
We also have a deal available in Carbon Arena. If anyone doesn't like 1-year leases, thanks for the shout out. Thank you so much, Paul. So switching gears to Tristan. So ADUs are a very hot topic in California. They're trying to add more supply. What is the best path to legalize, number one, unpermitted unit using state laws and ADUs? I know there's several clients that we've sold some buildings for that have a bootleg unit. What's the best way to get them to legalize that unit?
Yeah, this is a great question that comes up actually a lot. A lot of clients of mine have units that are unpermitted, and they end up getting caught for it one way or another. And there's a few ways, and I'll touch on the first, which is the state law. I mean, all of you know about ADUs. ADUs are going to be your best way to legalize an unpermitted unit. There's a few fun ways to do that. One of them is with the new state law called AB 2533. And that means that if you made the ADU or converted it or built it before 2022 and was renting it and you were renting it out, you can actually bypass a lot of the permitting process in Santa Barbara. You just have to get a private builder inspector out. You have a list of objective health and safety standards that it has to meet. That inspector will sign off on it, or they won't, and they'll tell you what you need to do to meet those objective standards, and they'll give it back to you. And then you get it handled, you give it to the city, they give you a permit. And that's really the best way using state laws. And to touch on the risk of having an unpermitted unit, and I think Paul can really touch on this a lot. Probably Niv too would have some fun to say about it. It has to do a lot with not having a certificate of occupancy, and so that means if you're renting a unit illegally, your tenant, if they find out, can demand all of your money back from their entire time renting at that unit. And something a lot of people don't know. And it's something that I think more people should know, so that they can take cautionary measures.
Is that true?
Well, so who here has a friend or has lived in a rental that somebody walled in a garage, or they had an area they're renting on a separate of the home? That's most of the coastal California. ADUs are only 10 years old? So there was habitable space and everyone rented out portions. With the Santa Barbara City Rent Registry coming out, you have to register all of your rentals. And if there is not a
a certificate of occupancy, which means it is an ADU, that is an illegal rental. So you are allowed to have one lease on your property. If you have 2 leases, that is an illegal rental. And currently the rent registry is saying if you do not register your legal unit and you're not on the registry, they will throw out your eviction action. So there's multiple things coming out, but basically I unfortunately think the rent registry is going to be forcing a lot of evictions, because if the tenant finds out or the city finds out, they're going to force you to make it permitted, and if you can't permit it, you have to kick your tenant out. That's him.
Oh yeah, what would you?
How long is the process, or what is that?
So if you have a legal ADU, how long does that process take to get that legalized?
Great question. It really depends. It can be really quick. In fact, just as of this year, the state passed more laws in benefit of ADUs, cutting the review timeline down to 15 days, and that's mandated. And so I typically see anywhere from 2 to 4 months for ADUs to get that permitted. And granted, that is a while, especially if it's not being rented out. And so something I like to say too is one of your biggest costs in pre-construction are your holding costs. That's why having an expert on your project to help expedite it is really important, because it saves you a lot of money.
There is something that people need to take into account when you build an ADU, because ADUs were proliferating in LA and nobody told this to people. So let's say like you find people are going to now have rent control, right? There are exemptions from the rent control statute. One of them is if you have a single family home. Now people don't understand what a single family home means. Single family home means there's one lease, there's one unit. You're renting the entire property to one person or one family. Now, let's say you have a front house and a back house, like a guest house, right? One of them, like some nice house. That could still be a single family home if you're renting the entire parcel to somebody. Let's say you don't have that, you just have a single family home. And now, when your single family home was built in the 1920s or 1930s. So it's an older piece, okay? Now you build your ADU. So, do you still have a single family home? No. You have a duplex. Right? Duplexes are not exempt from rent control, only if they're built after February 1st, 1995. That's the magic date. Well, your ADU is fine. It's not going to be rent control because its C of O was from this morning. But the house, the front house, which used to be a single family home, and if you want to rent the house separate from, if you're not living in it, you want to rent the house separate from the back house, the new ADU, guess what? Your back house is now rent control. And they don't tell anybody that. So just be careful. If you're gonna build an ADU in your own house, and you're gonna live in the front house, no problem, go to town. But if your idea is I'm gonna turn my single family home into multiple, and then great, I'm still gonna have this exemption, no, you're not.
Great point, and I think it's a little bit different from municipality to municipality. Per Santa Barbara, their draft ordinance for rent control, which you can submit your comments up until July 10th, says that an owner user of a duplex is exempt. However, our newest councilwoman, Wendy Santa Maria, is trying to switch that and make it so that even if you're an owner user in a duplex, that it will not be exempt. So we have all our marketing material on the table and stuff over there on the table that shows where you can submit to Santa Barbara Clerk. Yes?
Yeah, so I'm an architect, and I always think out of the box. So if you had a back unit, but you rented to the main house, and part of their cost of the main house would be that they get the rent from the ADU, so there's only one lease between the owner and the person renting the house, and then that makes the person renting the house responsible for leasing the ADU so that they collect their part of the rent to pay the landlord. Would that get around that?
No. You still have 2 units. And so, and you're still going to have it registered as 2 units. You're You're gonna have 2 different CFOs, one for the old house, one for the back house, and I guarantee you that the government is going to treat that like 2 units, and they're not looking here to do, fun games.
Okay, well, it's just like another thing is that if you're gonna do a junior ADU and you don't have enough square footage to make it work, the secret is to build an addition to your house before you then turn around and go in for your junior ADU.
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's attached or detached.
No, it's not for the other. I was just talking about if there's limits to how big the ADU, the junior ADU could be compared to the main house.
Yeah.
So if someone's gonna do that, but they don't have enough square footage to make it work, I'm saying go ahead and build an addition to the house, increase the main house square footage, and then after that is signed off, you then turn around and do your junior ADU with the square footage that you are allowed by law compared to percentage.
Makes sense?
That's awesome. So switching gears really quick, we're talking about supply of housing coming on the market in the Central Coast. The Builders Remedy Act, big topic in today's world. I know people in LA think it's very capable and happening in Santa Barbara. Talk to us about the 18-story building in Carpinteria and the Mission
Housing development.
There we go.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the Builders Remedy Law in California. It's basically saying that you know about the city's housing elements or the state mandated housing elements, and if the city doesn't comply and meet the deadline, there's something called Builders Remedy Law, and that basically means that builders can come in and propose a project that bypasses a lot of zoning code. It can't be denied due to zoning code. That means, for example, in the city of Santa Barbara, I'm sure you've all heard of the Mission housing development proposed by Buckingham Mission. 8 stories, 270 units, something like 400,000 square feet total proposed, right behind the Mission. That's using Builders Remedy Law. So I have a lot of people ask me, how is that even proposed? How is that being taken seriously? And that's why. And so that's something I like to tell people about, because it's something not a lot of people know. And it's something that builders in the area are using when the city doesn't meet their deadline. And a lot of people are also asking me, where is it at and what's going to happen with it? Is it going to get approved? So where it's at now is it's still in review. And the city and the people behind it have been having a lot of legal battles and back and forth, and the city recently won or prevailed in a lawsuit that they were filing against the city. There's currently one filed against the county too. But also recently, back in October, Senator Limon Pope passed a new law that is very narrowly written, so much so that it singles out that specific project, meaning it has to go through environmental review, and where it's going to probably get torn apart and not pass, but that's what's happening there. And then also in Carpinteria, where I'm from, there's a group proposing 18 stories in Carpinteria using that same Builders Remedy Law. Now, I've met with a lot of the plan check reviewers in Carpinteria, and specifically the one that is reviewing that project. And I think it's going to be a very similar story, because being from Carpinteria, my family having been there a very long time, I don't think we're going to see 18 stories in Carpinteria anytime soon. Yeah. So that's the story with that.
Thank you. We hired Tristan to build some ADUs. We get tired of managing, so we hire Paul to manage our properties. Maybe we have to hire Nick, hopefully not, but maybe we do occasionally. Thayer gives us great insurance, and then Trevor, where do you fit in all this? What are some of the most common reasons owners decide to get into a DSD?
I don't know why you guys do it. We're talking about legal problems, insurance problems, management problems. I offer an option to help take that away. And I know we have a lot of experts and near experts in the room. You guys are here trying to learn. Obviously, you're interested in becoming very knowledgeable on managing your rental property. I assure you there will come a point at some time in your life where you don't want to do it anymore. And that's where I help. There's a client in town we're working with who's 89 years old. He, for the last 60 years, has owned a 50-unit property down in Ventura. And he told me he spends 5 hours a day managing his property. Accounting, I think he even has a property manager to help him with some on-site. So it took him until age 89, but he's got the property listed and he's ready to spend more time with his grandkids. So the owners that are looking to retire from this headache, we often talk about the 3 T's of property management: the tenants, toilets, and trash. In Santa Barbara, we can add termites and taxes to that list of T's.
Those are all the same thing.
But that is ultimately the solution that the problem that the DST was created to solve. So a Delaware statutory trust it's a fractional ownership. In 2004, the IRS recognized it as a permissible replacement property in a 1031 exchange. So typically, when you sell an investment property, you're going to pay a lot of tax. And so it leads to a lot of owners continuing to own the property out of fear of the tax bill when they go to sell it. But what we do is we can go through a 1031 exchange. If we structure the exchange properly, we can defer all the capital gain tax that would be owed. And what you invest in is one or multiple properties that are structured as DSTs. So instead of owning 100% of 50 units down in Ventura, you might own 2% of a 350-unit Class A apartment building in Atlanta, Georgia. Or we can do that multiple times. You can buy 1% of multiple different properties that in aggregate give you the required replacement property to satisfy the exchange rules, but now deliver diversification and entirely passive ownership. That's where I come in, Logan. Is that?
Yeah, no, they've become increasingly popular for us over the last few years, and I know we've been successful in having California owners 1031 exchange out of active multifamily ownership and into very well diversified, risk-averse portfolio of Delaware statutory trusts in 6 different states, different asset classes, etc.
And to that point, I'd love to get your question. We have this point that in 2025, $8.5 billion of equity flowed into DST structures. 36% of it came from California property owners. The next highest state was New York at 8%. So California owners are really recognizing the challenges of management in this environment, but we also have some pretty low investment returns, or at least cash flow, from a lot of the real estate that we own here. And by pivoting out of California assets, in many cases, we can increase cash flow. What was your question, sir?
Yes. So let's just say you get into the exchange for that. Then what if you want to get out of it?
You can't.
Okay, that's my question.
Yeah, you can't. So that's the short answer. The long answer is for every investor that we have that goes, and ultimately there may be a $100 million asset that we're selling to 50 different investors or 100 different investors. And for every one investor that wants their money back tomorrow, I've got 3 that just want cash flow for the next 20 years. So the sponsor, the operator of the DST property, they have to pick some holding period that kind of compromises between those owners that want it forever and those that want their money back tomorrow. Ultimately, the operator, also known as the sponsor, they decide when the asset is sold. That tends to average about 5 to 7 years. But it is entirely at their control. There is no secondary marketplace to sell your interest in the property. Although often they are transferable interests, there's no marketplace to do it. Yeah?
So, your heirs, you can give them that, and they can become the owners of that?
Absolutely. And that's where we see this a lot as an estate planning tool. when you think of your heirs and whether they would be comfortable managing your property that they might inherit, oftentimes the kids are out of state, maybe they're not capable of managing. This is a way you can pivot out of the real estate holdings that you're managing into passive ownership. When you pass and the estate transfers, you still benefit from the step up in basis, so all that deferred capital gain is eliminated when the estate transfer occurs. And then your heirs will just earn the income until the DST property sells. So if you pass in year 2 of ownership and the property is going to get sold in year 5, the heirs will collect income for about 3 years, and then the property will sell. And they don't have any capital gain tax to pay because you got to step up to market value on the date of death. So they can just sell the property and not perform another exchange. So it becomes a very effective estate planning tool for that purpose.
Aren't there any California clawbacks on your depreciation that you exchange forward and all the other depreciation?
Yeah, so California has a lot of, they have a lot of creative ways to close loopholes or close tax benefits that other states have. Now, you're touching on one, which is called the clawback provision of Section 1031. So California, the state of California conforms to most of the IRS tax policy with regard to Section 1031, with one exception, which is if you sell a California property and you replace it with a property outside California, you have to continue filing a tax form with the state of California every year to let them know you still own that property. If you fail to file that form, they're going to assume that you sold the property and they're going to send you a tax bill clawing back the tax that you would have owed. If you in fact do sell the property and don't perform another exchange, you would owe the tax back to California. Now, there's a way to avoid that, and that is to die. If you die, then that clawback dies with you, and again, you get the step up in basis.
That's an estate benefit.
Say again?
That's an estate benefit.
An estate, that is an estate planning benefit. That all of our assets, if properly held, will get stepped up to market value on the date of death. DST as well.
Clawback, right?
I'm sorry?
Even with the clawback.
Even with the clawback, that goes away because the basis gets stepped up to market value on the date of death, so all that deferred clawback gain is essentially eliminated. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, and that's the same for like 1031 exchanging into an apartment building out of state, or 1031 exchanging into a single tenant net lease out of state. If you sell that before you pass, you will be subject to depreciation recapture and then the clawback, right?
Yep, that's right.
So, awesome, you answered a few of the questions, but I can also attest, and Glenn can as well. As siblings, I have 2 brothers, we love each other to death, we hang out all the time, but we have seen a lot of times when children inherit apartment buildings that one of them wants to refinance, one of them wants to buy new properties, one of them wants to manage mom and dad's property, and one of them wants to sell. And so there's a lot of disconnect. This is a way that we've seen where it's very cut and dry and easy if you do exchange into a Delaware statutory trust for the estate planning to just everybody gets 1/3 or 1/4 or whatever mom and dad's inheritance. So fantastic. Switching gears to NIB. So Santa Barbara, again, has a very strict rent control, extreme, 60% of CPI. You have until July 10th to submit your comments to the clerk at Santa Barbara. What happens, NIB, if we get kind of like an LA-style eviction defense in Santa Barbara?
Hell.
Brimstone?
Yeah. If you guys have
the ability to, and the time, to go down to the city council,
Thank you. Go down to the city council meetings and be very loud. Don't be afraid to be rude and express your disfavor with this law. Do it. Because I will tell you, these council people, morons, okay, they're taking basically a public poll in their mind. And they're trying to figure out, how can I make happy all the people who aren't going to vote for it? And they take that poll by sitting in their council seat and just seeing who comes and talks. It's very scientific. So go there, talk, explain how you cannot set my increases at 60% of the rate by which my cash loses value, while also telling the water and power people that they can raise my rates by 20% because we are going to go out of business. That's because it's math, it'll be hard for them to understand because they did bad on that class in school. But you can explain it to them very slowly, like this. And eventually they'll get it. And if there's enough of you that talk, sometimes they'll listen. I'll tell you what happened in LA. They tried to set it at 60% of CPI, and a whole bunch of landlords took the day off and came and said, you are not going to do this. And we got it to 90% of CPI, which again is not great, and that's still technically makes it so you lose money, but it's less money. And they also made it so that it's rounded to the nearest whole number, so that as long as it's at least 2.51%, it becomes a 3% increase. And by the way, your ordinance has no floor. LA's has a 1% floor. Yours has no floor. It even says if the CPI is negative, the amount you can increase it is 0.
You have to give it back right
No, well, you just gotta give them free stuff because you gotta give them free stuff. That's of course. Yeah. So yours has no floor. Go ask for a floor and explain to them that this doesn't make any sense. Go scream and shout at the top of your lungs, and they will listen to that. It's the only thing that they understand. So, yeah, please go do that. Because I'll tell you the one nice thing about rent control is it actually makes rents go higher. Rent control always increases rents. So even though it's going to be very difficult for the people who are there, it's going to, for your existing tenants, for the new tenants, what happens is because you lost so much money on the guy who gets there and stays for the next 30 years, when he leaves and you have to raise it to market, you have to jack it way up in order to compensate for that. And now all of a sudden, rents go higher. Right? How do you know? Exhibit A, New York City. What is the first city in America that's had rent control the longest? New York City. Who had the highest rents? New York City. Where does rent go up the most? LA. Why? Because we've had rent control since 1978. So it actually increases rents. It doesn't help tenants. Say that too. Tenants think they're getting help. They're not. Question.
Is there any pressure in Los Angeles to go to vacancy control?
Vacancy? No. There's pressure in Los Angeles to take all of the apartments. I'm not joking. Okay? If you voted for someone who's in the Democratic Socialists of America, okay, and you're in this room, you have mental problems. Because, let me tell you, my family comes from the former USSR. My great-grandfather had a factory. And they showed up one day and said, this is our factory now. Your house is our house now. Go live in this apartment. That's a real thing that happens. And if you don't think that that can happen here, Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, all places that suck. And they don't realize it. Now go listen to Commandant Mamdani and he'll tell you, we want to seize the means of production. Seize the means of production. Let me translate that into English. We're going to steal your stuff. And that's what the DSA wants to do. They want to take the apartments and make them so devalued that they can come and take them for pennies on the dollar, or maybe if they're in the mood for nothing. So if you don't fight back and explain that that's not something you want in Santa Barbara, they are going to come in and start taking your stuff and sell it to all of your tenants and all of these other dumb college kids, like this brand new utopia that they're going to live in. But let me tell you something. No one ever risked their life to leave North Korea or Venezuela or Cuba or the USSR and said, you know, all the tyranny was bad, but the apartments were beautiful. Everything sucks under socialism. So you need to fight back against it, and the wave and the tsunami is coming.
So I have a question on the registry. Can we use Prop 26 and/or Jax v. Santa Barbara as a way to at least make them more accountable with the registry and the fees that they're going to assess? That, you know, originally they said 157. I'm hearing it's going to be closer to at least 200, and they haven't done a fee study yet. So can we?
Here's how city councils act. We're going to do whatever the hell we want, and if you don't like it, you can take it up with the court. And then the court says, I'm not going to override the city council. You need to take it up with the Court of Appeal. They don't have to do studies. Let me tell you a fun little story that happened to me one time. In the city of Los Angeles, for non-rent control properties, they passed something called the Just Cause Eviction Ordinance, which made just cause eviction apply to all of the units in the entire city. But they had, like it is in AB 1482, one of the ways that you could do it is to do substantial remodel. So if you wanted to substantially remodel a unit, you could ask the people to leave, so you could take a garbage unit and turn it into a less garbage unit and rent it for non-garbage prices, which makes sense because all the buildings in Los Angeles are 50 years beyond what they were meant to survive, right? So we had a person who relied on that law, bought a non-rent control building, and wanted to kick out five of these units. These 5 people came to their local communist, whose name is literally Hugo, and started complaining to him. And so Hugo got a law to be put on the committee, the housing committee, to study, to take out substantial remodel as a basis for eviction. And they started, they were discussing this law in the committee. And so the 3 council members have the staff person from LAHD, the housing department, come and testify. And they said, over the last 2 years, because this was in 25, how many substantial remodels have been registered? Because you have to tell the city if you're going to do it. How many have you seen? They said 98 in 2 years for the entire city of Los Angeles. And they said of those, about 60 of them were for single-family homes. So that means in apartments, it was about 30. It's 15 a year. That is a statistical negligibility. And the council members, on record, I know because I listened to it and I played the tape for the judge during the hearing, they said, what? Like that, 98? We thought it was hundreds. Direct quote. We thought it was hundreds. We thought there were people being put on the street because of substantial remodels. And the staff member said, no, it's the lowest number of the kind of evictions we get. We get a lot of landlord occupancies, but substantial remodels is the lowest number. They heard all of this, expressed their surprise compared to their expectations, then passed it in committee anyway. And then when it went to the city council, the law that they used to pass the law to take out substantial remodels, and with an urgency clause making it effective, said because substantial remodels are causing a massive increase in homelessness. There wasn't a single person who came and testified that they were homeless because of a substantial remodel. To the contrary, the city itself testified to the council people the substantial remodels are a minor number of evictions. They passed it anyway. And then the city council member stood up and said, thank you to the people from the building who helped us pass this law. They passed this law in the middle of the 5 evictions I was doing, and then used it to cancel the evictions. And the judge said, sorry, that's the law. And they made it retroactive. They passed the law literally in the middle of the case. So, to answer your question, does the city council care about Jax or Prop or anything like that? They don't know how to read or spell any of those things.
But what about the city attorney? Because we are in litigation right now.
Yeah, the city attorney will come and tell the city council, here's what you can and can't do. And they'll be like, right, listen, that nerd, let's just do whatever we want. That's the way they act. I'll tell you why. It's very simple math. This math they can do. 9 out of 10 times, city council does something completely illegal. But the people who are affected can't afford the price of actually fighting back. So 9 out of 10 times, they just get away with it. The other one time, someone sues them and they win half of those cases. So they're like, wait a minute, you're telling me 19 out of 20 times we can just do whatever the hell we want? Like, no one can do anything about it? All right, guys, party time. That's the way they act. That's what they do. And the only thing they're afraid of is losing their jobs. That's it. By the way, the government actually doesn't care about tenants. This is something to realize. The government cares about one thing. The government. They only care about themselves. If don't come to them for help, they're not going to help you. The only thing you can ask them to do is stay the F out of our way. That's it. And that's what you should ask them to do.
I comment on a couple things. So yeah, as of now, the draft ordinance says specifically in Santa Barbara, $154 per unit per year for the rent registry, and you're allowed to pass 50% of that on to the tenant through a 12-month payment. So it would be a little bit of additional rent money, so to
It's
speak.
going to be closer to 200,
200.
according to Barbara Anderson of the city.
Gotcha.
And passing on 50%, that's only if the tenants want to pay.
Oh,
There's
okay.
no enforcement there.
Okay, good to know.
No. So people need to ask for that.
Yeah, submit your comments to July 10th, absolutely. I think it's just switching gears. We're going to have a full question and answer series just here in a moment. We're going to wrap up with our discussions. Niv, there's been some conversations about reducing HUD Section 8, specifically to Santa Barbara, I believe on September 1st. There's going to be drastic decreases in Section 8 vouchers. What's the deal with these Section 8 scams I've been hearing about?
You guys ever seen the movie Ghostbusters? The original? Like the good one with Dan Aykroyd? Okay. At the end is a very good quote you should live by. After they get trounced by the god, I always forget what her name is, the pretty one in the leotard, right? Winston says to Ray, he says, Ray, sorry. If anybody ever asks you, are you a god? You say yes. So if anybody ever asks you, do you take Section 8? You say yes. Yes. Just say yes to that. Please understand, you are not saying yes to the person asking you if you take Section 8. You're just saying, as a general idea, you would take Section 8. Then, see, 5 minutes ago, ghost that person. Don't talk to them. Now, the scam is like this. A lot of people don't know this, but Section 8 is a source of housing, source of income. And about a few years ago, they made a law that source of income discrimination is a protected class. So even though, I'm not saying that this is like a legal or moral equivalence, I'm sorry, not moral or spiritual equivalence, but a legal equivalence, if you say no to someone who brings you Section 8, it's the same as you saying, no, I don't rent to Jews, or I don't rent to families, or I don't rent to black people. Okay? That's what it is. That's what that means, legally. People don't understand that. So the scam is like this. Someone who's on Section 8 who has absolutely no interest in your unit goes on Zillow or texts you or texts your broker or your agent and says in writing, do you take Section 8? And then you, unwittingly, because you don't know the rule, you say, no, I don't want to do business with the government because that sucks. Boom, they have you. They'll immediately file the lawsuit. And by the way, even though it's a scam, it is 100% legal, and you will 100% lose that lawsuit if you fight it. You will end up having to settle it. And the settlement, at least in LA, is around $16,000 to $20,000. Yeah, right? And that's only if you come to me and I know those guys and I can get you a better deal on the scam. Okay? So, you always say yes. It doesn't matter who's asking, right? You just, do you take Section 8? Sure we do. Of course we do. And then that's it. You don't have to talk to them anymore. They'll move on to the next sucker.
Okay, you ignore emails from them?
No. Do not do that. Because what they'll do is they'll say, by ignoring it, you essentially didn't want to answer me. If they say, do you take Section 8? Say yes. If they insist on coming to, can I come view the unit? Sure. That's it. If they want to see the unit, show it to them.
Yeah, real quick, had in Santa Barbara, same experience. We said yes, because our management company, Meridian, awesome, said yes, and they never showed them back.
Of course not, because it's a scam. They're just looking for suckers. Don't be a sucker. To answer your question, I think what you're saying is, what could I have done to avoid this? Great. How old are those kids?
They're early 20s, they were smoking marijuana, we cited for it, they were up their windows.
Yeah, next time 3 kids in their 20s come to you, tell them to go back to their parents' houses, because they're not going to rent any apartments to them. That's how you avoid it. I'm not joking around. I am. But the reality is, young people are horrible.
Except for Rajay.
Say again?
Except for Rajay.
I was one of those kids.
See? I have to hire young people. It's really bad. I don't like them at all. And they're always just looking for scams. These are scams that are discussed on TikTok. Right? And the lawyers are very much involved in this. So you have to discriminate illegally. Now, I'm telling you right now, is it legal to look at these 3 punks and say, I'm not going to rent to a bunch of 20-year-olds? Of course not. Do you know who knows that that's your reason? Nobody, just you. Just don't say it out loud. It's not hard to discriminate. You just got to be smart about it. That's it. The people who discriminate, and sometimes it's illegal, but the people who do smart illegal discrimination call me the least. That's the reality. That's the effect that these policies have. Because it's either do that and take the slight risk that they might sue you, or just give them the apartment building. I don't feel like giving away my buildings, do you?
Any other questions from anybody for any of the panelists up here?
How long are we allowed to have this outside area?
Till, she said 9 o'clock, she'll be here till.
1 a.m.
So yeah, we'll put on some music. If you guys want to have like very specific questions or hang out, we got more food, more drinks. We got the place till 9, and we'd love to get to know you. I think I've known about half of you and met with half of you, but if I haven't, I'd love to say hi before you leave. And thank you very, very much for joining us. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.